Here we go. The button's clicked. Right.
All right.
We got a bit of a weapon here because we got a lady who runs, is it 2 hours 54?
2:54, yes.
That's absolutely fucking nuts. So what for a marathon, right?
Mhm.
So talk to us through this journey. Why did you get into this? And the whole spiel of running 26.2 miles. I think it's point two, isn't it?
Yes, point two. You can't forget the point two
You
because that
can't.
is the longest part of the race.
Yeah, I bet.
That goes on for miles.
Yeah, legit.
So yeah, I started as a non-runner. Like I have no athletic background, not at any point like through middle school or high school. I played tag and stuff as a kid, but I was never in any kind of like formal after school sport or anything like that. I started in college and I signed up for this like mud race, like one of those like mud run type things, but
Mm.
it was just a 5K. And it was in an effort to make it to this race called the Savage Race, where you're told, oh, it could be 5 miles, it could be 8 miles. We don't know. You show up on race day and you find out. And so, like, when you're running, yeah, 5K, like the difference between a 5 mile run and 8 mile run, huge. So I started there and I couldn't make it a quarter mile down the road before I started like dry heaving and dying and gasping for air. And I turned around, walked back home, and I was like, holy moly, what did I just do? What did I sign myself up for? But I was committed and I really wanted to see it through at least to that race, the 8 mile, potentially 8 mile Savage race. Savage, what is it called? The Savage Run, I think it's called. Anyways, so I stuck it through and then I did the Savage Mud Run. And while I was doing it, I had this like runner's high moment, which I had
Mhm.
never experienced at any point during my training. And I was like, wow, I would love to do this for 40 miles. And I don't know where I got the number 40, but that just kind of stuck in my head. And after I did that, I was like, okay, I now want to sign up for a marathon. And the rest was history.
Wait, so you went from running 5 miles. Did it end up being 5 miles or 8 miles?
I have no idea because I didn't even have a watch at the
Okay.
time.
I mean,
All I know is whatever it was, I couldn't even walk straight for days. Like I
mm.
couldn't even put my pants on without like holding onto the wall. I was so sore. I cried at the finish. I was like, oh my
Nice.
God, I can't believe I just did that. And so if anyone's unfamiliar with what a Savage Race is, it's like an obstacle course mud run where you get like electrocuted and you jump off of this like super high ledge into the water and you do monkey bars and stuff. And I couldn't do any of like the strength stuff, but anything that I could crawl through or they actually took out the electrocution thing and I was so ready for it. I trained myself like I'm just gonna power through. They didn't have that, but yeah, so it's a pretty intense run.
Mhm.
So my ambitions kind of started out a little bit high. So it kind of makes the fact that I jumped into the marathon, I guess, seem not so crazy, but I don't know. Uh,
You went from running between 5 and 8 miles, right? In that savage run, to then
mhm.
saying you're going to run 40.
Yeah, I was instantly like, this is and I still haven't done the 40 miles. I've done 30 and 50K in the
Fuck.
mountains.
Fuck.
Yeah. And I'm from Florida. So if there's no mountains here. It's all
Mhm.
like sand and dirt and flat terrain. So that was another bear to get around. And I trained for that like on a spin bike, just turning up the intensity and like riding on like a higher, level and doing strength training and stuff. So yeah, on the way to the marathon, I signed up for half marathon and I made it 3 miles before I started just walking the entire thing. And I finished in 3 hours and 25 minutes for the half marathon. And I finished that and I said, oh my God, this is so awesome. I want to come back and do it again. And I'm not sure why that happened because, I think I was literally dead last, or I was second to dead last in the half marathon for the women's. Like there was like 588 women and I was like 87 or 88. I don't even remember the exact number, but they were taking down all the tables. They ripped down the banners. Like everyone went home. Everyone was gone. This lady who had like a knee brace on passed me, and like she was much older than me. It was just a disaster. But I had a lot of fun, and I kind of knew within my heart, like, I don't know, I like getting my ass handed to me, and I like, getting ground up and coming out on the other side.
Mm,
So after that happened, I was like, I'm just even more motivated to come back in and do it again and continue on the path to the marathon.
mm. Yeah, that's massive being able to, I don't want to say fail because you didn't fail at all, right?
Right.
But get smacked in the face by an event so hard, you're like, let's do this again.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
huge. What benefits did you get from running that distance?
Well, actually, that's a really good question. There's social benefits because you're running with a group leading up to it. Like you join like a run club. Well, most people do. Well, do most people? I'm just putting myself, I'm like overlaying my own beliefs onto everyone else. I would think most people join a run club, but I joined a run club. So there was like social elements to it. Everyone's going to sign up for the next big race. And so there was a little bit of that. But then there was also the mental benefit of overcoming obstacles on the way through the training, even though my training was a little bit like lackluster. But coming over everything that I had to in that one day, like the fear and just feeling like I didn't belong, showing up anyways and giving it my best, going through all the pain, the last 3 miles, especially in the half, and
Mm,
just knowing um, that I survived. Honestly, that was the biggest mental benefit because every single time that I would do something super tough and I would survive, I'd be like, okay, I can come back and I can do that again. Like I lived. So,
mm.
yeah.
So let's go into that a little bit more in a sense of why did you want to push yourself through that? Right.
Yeah. Wow. These are all really good questions.
I'm just interested.
Yeah. So, you know, um, growing up, my life was not very easy. Like, I grew up with a single parent, super poor. And so there are a lot of obstacles that I faced just um, in that. And then when I slowly, like, when I became an adult, my life got a little bit easier and I started going to college. And I don't know, I think I just like I missed some aspect of the struggle. Like I was like, my life is a little bit too easy right now.
Mm,
And I was also, um, I was in a school that has like 60,000 people. And in my classes, each course had like 300 plus people in a like, I want to call it a stadium. It's not a stadium, but it's a big like amphitheater um, room. And so, like, the person that you're sitting next to one day will not be the same face the next day. And
mm,
so, because I wasn't living on campus, like, I had no friends, didn't really get to like know anyone, and yeah, it was just, my life was kind of boring, and I was like, well, what can I do to create a challenge, meet new people? And I don't know particularly why running, because there's all sorts of sports out there like soccer and you know um, rock climbing and stuff like that. I don't know why I picked running in particular, but because I was like looking at like skydiving, like in this point where I'm like, what am I gonna do with my life? And if you know me, I'm not a risk taker. You would think that I'm like some kind of base jumper or something, like taking on all these challenges, but I don't live my life that way. I kind of play within the safe zone. So it was outside of my character, but yeah, it's really just trying to add the challenge and meet new people that drove me to to look for something, some kind of sport. Yeah, and it just ended up being running.
mm. I think seeking challenge is really important in people's lives. I think it
Yes.
teaches you so much about yourself that you wouldn't gain elsewhere,
Right.
and I
Yeah. And
think
I'm,
that, sorry, go on.
oh, I was going to say that, when you overcome that, like that, there's nothing in life that can take that achievement from you and all the
Mhm,
experiences and the lessons. Like that's yours. That stays with you for life.
mhm. Yeah, 100%. And I think there's something to be said about physical challenges, right? Because we are physically expressing ourselves every day, right?
Yes.
And we're physical beings. We do things, we touch it, we move it around.
Hmm.
So getting that like instant feedback from the physical stuff, I think there's something to be said there. I think there's definitely, if you break through those barriers, you get a different sense of achievement rather than breaking through a mental barrier. And then if you put those
Yes.
together, then you're winning.
Right.
Mm. What would you say was the hardest, like your biggest fear going into this?
Really just putting myself in a scenario where I felt like I did not belong. Um, I've lost, well, actually, I say that I've lost 50 pounds because that was me when I like got to my skinniest point. But since then, I've like put on some weight. And some people are like, oh, well, that's just muscle. And I'm not sure about that part. But, anyways, I'm going on a tangent. But I've lost like a ton of weight. So, initially, like, I didn't know how I was going to be perceived by the running community, and especially like joining a group can be so intimidating. Um, and really, that's been the hardest part. I mean, even when I was in a group, then I would try and find a new thing like, okay, well, now I'm going to run without my shirt on. And I was doing that when I was bigger. So even that, like, that was super hard to overcome. But yeah, really just getting a sense of belonging was, I think, pretty difficult. And then also, obviously, when you add a challenge to your running regimen, that's difficult, but really just getting my foot in the door and showing up was the hardest part.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, starting the momentum is always the hardest part, right? That initial push, and the next thing
Yes.
you know, it's all moving and you grease the groove. Like if you
Right.
fall off a few times, then you've got an out, right? Your brain subconsciously knows, hey, I have an option to quit. It's like, but if you
Right.
never if you never do that and you keep the momentum going, it just becomes second nature. And that's usually what I advise people pretty pretty much on a daily basis. Like, it was just
Yeah.
just start something, man.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people kind of have this view that it happens backwards. Like you are that person and then you go achieve those goals. Where really, I think like you create the person that you want to be. I'm not like a risk taker or anything like that. Like that just started by taking little bite-sized chunks and being like, well, I'll try this and then I'll try that and then I'll try something else. And then when someone sees my progress, they're like, oh my gosh, well, you must be like this like high achieving, like risk taking daredevil. And it's like, no, I'm pretty sure I just created that like one piece at a time.
So who do you want to be?
What was that?
Who do you want to be?
Um, Someone who doesn't let, I'm trying to think of how to word this. I want to be someone who doesn't allow small like limitations stop me from pursuing something that I really want to do.
Mm,
So, for instance, I mean, this is just something that's kind of silly, but I get a lot of people who ask me like, you're so short. How do you how do you run that fast? Like I wouldn't have even attempted to run that fast if I was as short as you. I'm like, well, I mean, you just got to do it. Like I don't ever want to look back on my life and think, oh, well, I could have been this person, but I'm a woman and I didn't come from this background that a typical athlete comes from and just like silly things like that. I try to lift the veil off and pursue that challenge despite the fact that there's that wall there.
mm. There's a lot of inspiration we pulled from that, though. Like, we're all dealt a set of cards, right? Some are dealt really
Yes.
good cards, others are dealt an absolute shit hand. But at the end of the day, we've all got to play it, right?
Yes.
And like seeing people that are just like, oh, hey, yeah, I'm not tall, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not born on that side of the line, I'm born on this side of the line. But work with those things and have the self-awareness to figure out what they're good and not good at, right? And then they can
Exactly.
kind of spin it for their own advantage. I think that's fucking badass.
Thank you.
You know, well,
Yeah.
I think self-awareness is a superpower, right?
Hmm.
But I also think people are scared of it. They're scared of acknowledging the parts of themselves that isn't great, right? So the weakness, the not so good parts, right? I
Hmm.
was like, well, if you're only dealing with your strengths, you've got a weak link in the chain, and you're only as strong as your weakest link.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. So what's next?
Well, I'm running Boston in 2 weeks,
That one's a
and
big
I'm
one. Mm.
yes. This is another race where I don't have the conditions like here in Florida to mimic what Boston is going to be like, but I've been just making do with what I can. And I'm gonna try to run. I don't want to say try. I'm gonna run sub 250. And well, if it doesn't
Oof.
happen, then it'll be the next one.
Mm.
So, 26.2 is a long ways to go. And so anything can happen at any point and completely demolish that goal. But in the end, I mean, if not this race, it'll be the next one. If not the next one, it'll be the next. So I'm not like hinging or view of myself like on how this one outcome goes. But ultimately, this is on the road to qualify for the Olympic trials marathon.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So for sub 250, what do you need to average for a mile? What's the mile pace?
6:30 or below.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I went to get my vaccine after my last marathon where I was like, oh, did you know? Like I just ran a marathon, how every marathoner does. Like,
Yeah,
gotta let everyone in the world know.
everybody knows.
And yeah. And he was like, oh, well, what pace did you run? And I was like, oh, like 6:39. And he was like, oh my God, were you like sprinting the entire time? Because he said his mile pace was around that. And I was like, yeah, I guess it kind of pretty much is a sprint, but you become conditioned aerobically to handle that and withhold the pain. I think it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts,
Oh,
endurance stuff. So like it starts reasonable, and then you're like, oh my God, you're drowning. As to where like some of the power, um, how do you like power distances like 800-meter, 400-meter, 5K type stuff is like you're burning from the second that the gun goes off. Like you're
mm.
redlining, you're drowning. But yeah,
I'm not gonna lie to you. 6:30 is around my mile time.
that
And
was
you
around mine too.
and you
I
did it
mean,
for
yeah,
fucking 26 of them.
yeah. Point two.
Point two. Sorry.
No, I'm just
No, I'm
just messing with you.
no way. In fact,
Yeah.
I've done a marathon.
Oh, which one?
I did the Manchester one back home.
Oh,
Yeah, I did it when I was 18, 19, 18. Yeah, I
so
think.
you finished it and you were like, never again?
Well,
Or
it wasn't the most enjoyable experiences, put it that way.
yeah.
I wasn't running this race and be like, you know what, I'm having a great time. This is my thing.
Hmm.
I've I was
No
always
runner's high moment.
no. The runner's high I got was running through my city. I love my city, right?
Yeah.
And there was maybe a mile and a half in the whole thing, maybe a mile, where there was no spectators, right? So there was
Uh-huh.
pretty much constant people just like cheering you on, and kids were just giving me like jelly babies. That was my high. I
Yeah,
ate
I always
about
say the
3 packets of jelly babies. It was so
oh
bad.
no.
I was like,
Yeah,
keep
I
them
always
coming.
say I always say the runner's high starts when you stop running.
Mm.
I don't know if that's true, but I always
Oh,
feel good after I'm done. I'm like, thank you.
yeah, it was I don't know, it was a weird one. For me, I had a really big why at the time. That's why I like my dad was going through like a rather difficult time, and I
Mhm.
didn't know what to do. So I rang him that morning. I was like, "Oh well, I know you're going through such and such. Um, I'm gonna run the marathon for you."
Yeah.
And I got like a t-shirt that was like, "It's okay, Dad." And on the back, it was like, "I got you back." So you got a why, so I could get through it, no problem.
Yeah.
But for people that do it out of enjoyment, you are the crazy motherfuckers.
Well, in the last marathon, I kind of had an experience like that where my husband's father recently passed away from COVID, and like the death was horrific. Like probably he's probably traumatized at like a level at like someone who's like sees war. Like it was really bad. And so like on those final 6 miles, I was just like, wow. I mean, when you think about that person that you're running for and like all the pain that they're going through, in that moment, in that final point too, that there's nothing that you're experiencing that even measures to the amount of suffering that they're going through. And so that definitely keeps you in perspective in that moment.
Mm. Having a why is so important, man.
Yes.
I like in everything. It gets you out of fucking bed. Because if you
Yes.
didn't know why you were doing it, you didn't have a why, no one would get out of bed because getting out of bed in the morning is hard.
Right. And I love like when I don't know, I'm sure all of your viewers have seen like on Instagram, people say like, oh, motivation is bullshit. Cause like you can't be motivated every single day, ready to like run out the door and nail every single run that you have. Like at the end of the day, the why is going to keep you going, not like this sense of feeling like happy to get out the door all the time.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. And I think um there's times where you've got to get pissed off, right?
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
positivity, big on it. Happiness, obviously, that should be like the North Star. But like sometimes you just gotta be like, hey, I'm gonna wind myself up today because it's gonna give me the energy to just do this thing that I need to do.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I've heard some runners say like they need like a hater. Or like someone who told you like you can't do that,
yeah, yeah,
and they
yeah,
think about that person, and when you think about walking, you're like, oh hell no.
yeah.
Like
Fuck you.
I'm yeah, yeah, they would love to see you walking.
Mm.
So
Well, it's true though, right? Like that's what gets us through pretty much everything, right? Work, running,
yes.
like literally everything. I was like,
Yeah.
in fact, no, motherfucker, I'm going to prove you wrong. Whether it's a school teacher, a family member, a friend, a so-called friend,
Right.
right, an
Mm-hmm.
acquaintance, or some bloody barista that spat in your coffee or something. I don't know. You know,
Right.
sometimes you need that.
You do. I think that's
Mm.
a really important element.
What? Mm. Well, what's your purpose?
I mean, just kind of going back to like not wanting myself to be stopped by the small things in life. Really my purpose is just to like juice as much as I can out of myself.
Mm.
So I do harp on the goal of running an Olympic trials qualifying time, but really it's about like achieving the mindset to get there. The time on the clock, or the time that or the amount of weight that you're lifting, whatever you're doing in your sport, is just a reflection of where you are mentally, I feel like.
I could
So
not
yeah, I
agree
mean,
more.
yeah. And I mean, my purpose is just to juice as much as I can. And at first, I thought juicing as much as I can out of myself would be like running a Boston qualifying time. But then I achieved that within like 6 months of training. So then I was like, okay, that's not juicing myself. So I was like, let me go to the next level. Like, I want to run a sub 3. So I do that. And I'm like, okay, that's still not, I mean, we're getting close, but um, yeah, I
Wow.
mean, that's why the time is just kind of arbitrary, but it's a nice little cool goal, you know?
You do realize that's inspiring as fuck.
Thank you.
No, no, it's like I'm sure everyone gets inspired by physical like feats of strength, endurance, whatever, right? Painting, fucking whatever. But you touched on a really important point of the mindset that you had to adopt or create, right? To be able
Hmm.
to get there. And it's that people get inspired from. Just like what just this relentless like pursuit of something more, right? It doesn't matter what I'm doing right now. If I'm going towards something, everything's going to be fine,
Yeah,
right? And you're just like, how is this woman, how is this dude still going? You're like, well, they're just going, they're doing their
right.
thing. They're hunting something, they're chasing. It's the Matthew McConaughey speech, right? It was like he always needs someone to chase, and that's himself in 10 years' time. And every day
Yes.
they're 10 years ahead of him, right? You're never going to meet your hero because he's got something to
No,
chase.
right.
I think again that's something that people need. They need something to chase. Like I kind of come to the realization. I've been kind of meditating on it. I say I'm meditating on it, not sat on the floor cross-legged, but like just kind of thinking over it.
Hmm.
I need something to chase. Like I'm like a rabbit chasing after something. There's like I
Yeah,
need something to be able to. Okay, I'm never actually going to touch it. I'm never going to have it in my hands, more than likely.
exactly.
But I have to be able to fucking go for it because that's what just keeps me going.
Exactly. And, there's been a lot of people who, when the Olympic trials qualifying time came out, they were like, well, Jeremy, it got switched from 2:45 to 2:39, I think. So they're like, well, there goes your chance. Like, that's out of the window for you. You're probably not going to make it there. You're probably going to make it to 2:44, but definitely not 2:39. And I'm like, well, for me, it was never about the time. Like, and even if I don't get it, I mean, I will die trying. I will legitimately die trying. My biggest fear is looking back on my life and thinking I could have achieved this, except, you know, this got in the way, or, this person told me it's a little bit too much for me. So I took that advice to heart and acted on that and then dropped my goal. I mean, that would be my worst nightmare. The best vision for my life is I look back, even if I don't achieve it, and I can say, okay, well, I gave it everything that I had. And even
Yeah.
if I came within like 3 seconds of the goal and I missed it, I mean, that's not as important as knowing that I put everything into this.
Fuck yeah, because you can
So,
sleep at night,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And
you
that's
know?
really, yeah. When I have bad runs, because I have a run where I get a huge PB and I'm still not happy, or I miss my PB and I'm super happy, because it's not really about the time, it's just about knowing that you gave it everything you had in that moment. So even if you get a new record and you didn't give it your best, it's almost like it doesn't even count, you know?
Mm, hell yeah. Like just coming in, taking gold, what does that do?
Right.
Because might feel great for 2.3 seconds, right? And the next thing you know, you put it back on your shelf with all the other golds and you forget which one it was. And
Right.
then every time you look at it, it devalues itself,
Hmm.
But if you're like, hey, I fucking ran such and such a time, or I lifted such and such a weight, and that took everything I fucking had.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter what you got out of it, like tangible wise, right? You literally just kind of look at yourself and be like, man, that was badass.
Right.
I remember first time I ran such, a Boston qualifier. You're like, that absolutely did my back end in, but I'm still here, still grinding for something, and I'm super
Right.
proud of that race, right?
Yeah.
2:39.
Yeah. Yeah.
God damn.
and that will be a sub 6 minute mile. So I think it's, under 3:45 per kilometer.
Fucking hell.
Yep. I'm getting there.
But you're not that far off.
Yeah. And, I started with like my mindset has always been like, if I can do a mile at that pace, I can do a 5K. And if I can do a 5K at that pace, then I can do a 10K and so on and so forth.
Mm.
So right now I'm at the point where like I can in practice do 6 miles at that pace. So now I
Wow.
have like 1/4 of it done. Now I just need to piece together everything else.
Is that how
So
you train for this? Do you like piece the puzzle together and try and do it in intervals and
yeah, over time, that is the bigger picture. Um, and on the way, you're just hitting smaller goals getting there.
mm,
So, but yeah, you're just breaking it down into smaller and smaller pieces. Like when I had the OTQ goal, well, I had never publicly announced it before. I don't think I had ever announced it. Or no, maybe I did before I hit the sub 3 that I was going to go for this. Um, I just lost my train of thought. But yeah,
that's it.
anyways, yeah, I mean, you just piece it all together and starts with 1 mile. And then eventually you start like running a 5K at that. And you start running a 10K at that. And then you're running a half. And now you're really getting into the zone where you're like, okay, I can see it on the horizon, as to where
Mm.
before you're like, okay, this is a little crazy. And um, everyone's probably laughing at me or something. I don't know. But it seems outlandish at first. But then when you start slowly piecing it together, you're like, oh, this is happening.
Listen, we're all
So,
crazy, we're all
yeah.
fucking nuts in our own way, right? We
Yeah.
all see something as being possible, and 99.9% of the population will see it as impossible, right? There's always
Yes.
something, even if it's
Yes.
like, I'm going to win 10-0 on a bloody PlayStation, like whatever, like you can see something that other people can't, and that will mean that people think you're crazy, right? You got to be able to stick
100%.
with it.
Yeah. And I think like, going back to that point, when someone tells me like, oh, this is far-fetched, like you're not cut out for this, or like you run too much, I've gotten all sorts of, feedback telling me to basically just quit. And ultimately, that's a reflection on how they see themselves if they were in my shoes. Like that would be their perception. That's not what I'm looking at. I can see that it's possible. But so I used to take it personally at first when someone would tell me, like, oh, well, this is happening because you run too much, or like, so I run streak as well, which means I run every single day of the week with no days off. And I have people tell me like, oh, well, you got a cold because you run too much, or like you're struggling in one race because you never take a break. And it's like, okay, well, you're seeing this from your perspective and you think this is impossible. It's not like an attack on me.
Well, it's just blunt force trauma, like eventually you will become numb to that stimulus and you'll be able to
Yes.
just overcome it, right? It's like if I'm a bit of a history geek, right? Remember, do you know Rasputin at all?
No.
No,
I
that's
mean, I
okay.
know, but like the name, but not any kind
That's
of,
okay. Some
yeah.
crazy like monk in Russia, early 1900s, right? But he would microdose and poison himself. So if someone tried to assassinate him with a poison, he's already built up the immunity, so it's not going to kill him. It's exactly the same that we do in training, right? We
Yes.
just beat the shit out of ourselves, but under under control, right? Microdose, beat the shit out of yourself. So then when it happens, like you're not going to break, and that's my entire point for people to train, right? And then I think the world pandemic is a great example um of like, okay, well, if you like look after yourself, it's more of a prehab,
Yeah,
preventative medicine rather than reactive ones, and you can take it anywhere. Like, look after yourself so you go down the stairs. And if you turn funny, you're not going to like break an ankle,
exactly.
right? Like, it could literally just be anything, or
Yeah, I
stave
mean,
off osteoporosis.
yeah, there are so many people out there who do these like incredible feats. Like I think there's this guy who ran like 100 miles on nothing but water, no carbs. And I mean, the human body is capable of so many amazing
Yeah.
things as long as you just give it that, you just take little bite-sized pieces and then like it's almost like climbing a mountain. Like you feel like you're getting nowhere. And then all of a sudden you look behind you and you're like, oh my God, look at the view. Like, look at how high I've gone. But while you're climbing it, you're just like looking at dirt and branches and rocks, and you're just like, oh, this is never gonna end. Like the top's like all the way up there. But yeah, trying to think of who else. I mean, there's just so many people, especially like in the running, ultra running community, who do these crazy feats of achievement that people believe, rightfully so, that they're impossible. But just taking little bite-sized pieces at a time is possible. So
Do you listen? I'm pretty sure you will, but do you listen to any Goggins stuff?
I do. Oh my gosh.
I
So
fucking love
Goggins is
that man.
not, yeah, Goggins is not for everyone, but he's for me. Like he's so awesome.
Yeah,
He is the like yeah, he's one of my heroes. But I know a lot of people who are like, oh, he's so extreme. I mean,
that's
they're not a fan.
yeah, and that's great. Like, okay, fine, but at the end of the day, that fella can live his life the way he wants to live it. You can live
Yeah,
your life the way you want to live it. Like, he's never telling you this is exactly what you have to do. Like,
right.
you can pick it up or you can put it down.
Yeah,
It's a book.
yeah.
You don't have
Yeah.
to read
And
it.
he is like the epitome of, change, making like radical change in your life. Um, and it's so crazy that, um, I mean, to my knowledge, I don't know what he went to school for. I don't think he ever went to college. Trying to think back, I don't think so. Yeah, but he's like somehow knew the psychological principles behind like change without actually being educated on it. I mean, that's insane.
I think I think there's a lot of knowledge to be gained from trauma. If you're
Yes.
able to survive it, right? If it doesn't end up fucking taking you out,
Hmm.
then and you have the self-reflection to be able to think about it and just kind of process over those things. I think you can gain so much knowledge purely from experience.
Yeah.
I've met some of the most intelligent people in my life, and academic wise, they'd be classed as like a failing student.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But they come out with so much knowledge and wisdom. And you're like, how? How are you doing this? It's like, oh, it's just
Right.
experience. They think about it and they just live life.
Yeah, it definitely is that ability to be self-reflective and just honest with yourself. And that's definitely true.
Mm, I fucking love Goggins so much.
Yeah, me too. I have his book and the audiobook as well. I
Mm,
mean, I listen to his interviews like on
mm.
repeat. I mean, he's just so awesome.
I just want to give the dude a hug.
I know, right?
You're like, what? He's like
I know.
six
Shake
foot
his hand.
something, and I'm like only 5'10. I'd be dwarfed.
Yeah, I'm 5'2", so
He's probably a
come up to
foot
his belly
taller than you.
button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, he's a really good example of you can create some change. Even
Yes.
so, because people look at the extreme, right? And he goes from like A to Z. Okay.
Hmm.
But if you can use it as some inspiration, someone to look up to or whatever, right? And you go from A
Hmm.
to B, that's insane. Congratulations. You've literally changed your
Yes.
life. You don't have to fucking go do these 800-mile races in 8 weeks or something crazy that he did. All right. You can literally just, hey, I'm going to get up 10 minutes early. I'm going to walk up and down my stairs, right, for 5 minutes. I'm going to sit down and have a coffee for 5 minutes. And I'm just going to
Hmm.
like reflect over some things. That's it. you've changed your life. You can start fucking small. You don't have to like swim around Great Britain like Ross Edgley did, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people sell themselves short by telling themselves or feeding themselves a narrative that in order to change, they're going to have to do like that kind of jump, you know,
Yeah.
from A to Z. When really it's just like change starts with just consistently doing one small thing. Um, and that could be like drink an extra glass of water or get 30 extra minutes of sleep. You know, it starts there and it just starts to grow. But you can't take off this like huge bite size, big mouthful of change. It's too much. Um, and I think a lot of people, I don't know if it's like purposeful or what, but I know I've done it in the past where I'm like, oh, I can't change this. Like I have A, B, and C to overcome, and I can never overcome that. And you just end up digging this like imaginary hole that just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And you feel so hopeless because it's
Mm.
just like growing as the excuses grow. When in reality, I mean, it's just changing one tiny thing will get you out of that hole, you know?
Well, we all have that voice in our head, right? The devil and the angel on your shoulder, or the inner bitch, or whatever you want to call it, right? We all have that
Mm-hmm.
like voice of doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in in times where that starts talking to you, we give it too much time, right?
Yeah.
We sit down, we're like, oh, yeah, okay, what have you got to say today? And we listen to it and we have a little bit of a conversation back, right? When in reality, every time that motherfucker starts to talk, you tell it to shut the fuck up and you just go do
Yeah.
something.
100%. I think Goggins has I forget if it was an interview or something, but he was saying like you have to have an answer for that voice. And that's kind of like, I mean, not exactly tying back into the why, but when you're in that event, whether it's, you know, lifting, running, rowing, and you start to think, oh, well, why am I doing this? This isn't worth it. No one cares. And you're giving it too much, like you're conversating with it, like you're talking about. I mean, you have to have an answer ready for it to tell it to shut the fuck up because otherwise it's just going to run rampant.
Oh yeah, and it'll take over. And the next thing you know, that's got momentum. Right?
Yes.
It's all about momentum and habits, right? You've got to be
Yeah.
able to be quick on the mark.
Yep.
Now, I'm gonna get up and go clean the dishes, right? Or I don't know, go for a walk. Or as soon as I start sort of feeling that, and you're like, oh, now I'm tired and I've had a big week or whatever, it's like, bitch, go for a walk, go to the gym,
Yep.
write something, get a coffee, just change your environment. You know, even if it's 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. I had a friend who once told me like just put on your shoes and just get out the door. Just start running for like 5 minutes on a day where you don't feel like running. And so like once you're out there and that has momentum, the rest of the shit doesn't even matter.
Mm,
You know, all that just falls to the backside and you're like, well, I'm out here. And so you get it done.
mm. Same in the gym. Someone comes in super beat up, unmotivated, doesn't want to be there, whatever. A little bit banged up too, maybe with a little bit of an injury. Hey, take it as a moving day. Just come in.
Hmm.
I don't care what weight you use. I don't care how hard you go. I just want you to move around. That's it. That's all you're gonna do. You're gonna move around. You're gonna high five some people, and you're gonna go home. So you've kept the
Right.
habit of coming to the gym at the same time. You've moved around, so you've got some sort of serotonin and endorphins flowing. You've seen your buddies, right? And then you've kept yourself proud. But it's like, hey, I could have listened to that voice, but I didn't. I came in and I did something proactive.
Right.
It's just got to do something.
Yep.
Rome wasn't built in a day, right? But they were laying bricks
Yeah.
every hour.
Right.
I got 3 questions.
Oh yeah.
All
Shoot.
right. What's the greatest piece of life advice you've ever received?
Oh my gosh. Oh
Sorry to land
wow.
it on you.
Um, oh gosh, the greatest piece of life advice. I mean, Well, I guess if we could tie it back into everything we've been talking about is every time I go through something difficult, my dad always tells me like only the strong survive, like only those who keep swimming
Mm,
are going to stay on top of the water. And so it's not about like that piece of advice is not necessarily saying that like you have to go hard every day and you have to do, the best that you can, but it's just you have to just hang on and just make it happen that you're just going to at least float. And every day that you just at least are floating, you're going to make it to the other side of the river. So, yeah, I would say that.
mm, that's a good one. What's the worst piece of life advice you've ever received?
Uh, oh man, there's so much. Oh, worst piece of life advice. Oh geez. I mean, I would just say the people who tell me to stop running because it's bad for my knees.
Mm,
Yeah.
brilliant.
Or I don't know. I can't really think of anything. Like I'm my mind is being flooded and I'm not able to like grab something specific. But yeah, anyone who's ever told me to like just give up or that this is like too much. I mean, that is honestly the worst advice. And um, especially when I'm going through something in my life
Mm,
and someone's telling me like, oh, just put down the running. It's like running is not necessarily all that I have, but it's such a huge part of my life. My mental health, like really is hinged on me being able to go outside and move my body, which I guess you could say that's unhealthy, but it's like if you can't, I don't know, if you can't pursue what you love, I mean, I don't see how the harder things in your life are going to get any easier,
mhm.
you know?
I I disagree with it being unhealthy, right? Because I think people like extremes because they also like to make excuses, right?
Hmm.
They will use the top, I'd say 3% of people that, yeah, they have taken it to an unhealthy extreme, right? But that usually, if you dig a little deeper, you can uncover a hell of a lot more problems, right?
Hmm.
And then they're like, oh, okay, if that means if I do that, that means it's unhealthy. Okay, I'm not going to do it. You're like,
Right.
no, you do realize you have to put yourself so deep into that fucking hole that you don't even know which way's up, right?
True.
Like, no, 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 you're way off that, intensity, you're way off it. If you're talking to me, it is not max effort. It's like, bitch, I want you to fucking pass out, right?
Yeah.
Um, so no, man, like I I don't want to say I preach, but I would advise people to have two things, right? One inside, one something physical and something non-physical. So
Hmm.
when you can't train, because we can't train all the time, obvious reasons, we want super compensation, right? So we go back into the gym more recovered than we were last time. So then our progress can go further, and et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
Um, but then we can still look after ourselves. So you're not just relying on one thing, right? So if we have a table with one leg and I take that leg away, the table is no longer a table because it's on the floor, right? If we have two
Hmm.
legs, it's a little bit better, right? More pillars. So that's all I say is like, write something down, go see a movie or whatever, do something else that like helps the mental health. But people, to my point, um, they play the oh no, it's an obsession card too much. I was like, there's a
Right.
difference between passion and obsession. You know, you can be incredibly passionate about something, right? And that's what just lights you up. And it's the feeling, right? The feeling of being
Hmm.
passionate about something is different than the feeling of being completely obsessed.
That's true. Thank you for that, because now I have a little nugget of wisdom.
Ah,
Whenever someone's like, "Oh, well, this is too much," I'll be like, "Blam."
well, there's also another one you could say. You could just turn around and say, go fuck yourself. But
That might be better, and that's honestly what I feel like saying in that moment. I get
beautiful.
so irritated. Yeah.
It gets me in trouble a lot, like honestly, man, live and let live. Do whatever
Yeah.
the fuck you want to do.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting is there's no one who's ever doing more than you that says that, right?
Yes,
There's no one who's like, there's no one who's outdoing you who says, oh, that's too much to stop.
we 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 also have a saying back home when someone tries to tell you what to do and give you unsolicited advice, right? We have a saying of I don't walk into your home and slap the dick out your mouth, so don't tell me what to do. Yeah, but whichever one you want to use. You want to go
Yeah.
down the philosophical route, then great. If you want to just like metaphorically bitch slap him in the face with a wet salmon, you do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Either or gets the point across.
Yeah. Agreed.
Because you're always going to put your shoes back on, lace them up, and go for a run.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe you can use them as the motivation of fuck you, the hater.
Oh, they definitely go into that basket. And I'm sorry if anyone who's listening has ever told me that. but,
Of the
but
helping
yeah,
you, then, at least they're helping you.
yeah, when I am in like the final like stages of a race, that definitely comes into my mind where I'm like, oh, I'm thinking about that son of a bitch that told
Mm,
me like I was never gonna get here
mm,
because I was doing too much
mm,
or I wasn't training the right way or something. And then
mm.
it's like, aha.
I'm here now, motherfucker.
Yeah, exactly.
Last question. Three
Yeah.
words you tell your younger self.
Oh gosh. 3 words. It has to be like a phrase in 3 words.
It can do, or you can pinpoint 3 words that mean something, and mentally you can elaborate on it. It's completely up to you. This is your thing.
Um, Perseverance pays off.
Ooh,
Yeah.
God damn, that one's good.
Yeah.
Mm, perseverance pays off. I like that a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, Rome wasn't built in a day. And so I think like a lot of people expect instant results. And if I was one of those people who went into this expecting instant results, I wouldn't have decided to stick with that.
Mm,
Just knowing that every time I come back and I try it again and I try it again, it's going to pay off, keeps me coming.
mm, mm.
Like I'll unlock something.
I
Maybe I
totally
won't.
agree.
I don't know, but
You know,
journey will be fun.
if you shoot for the moon, you end up in the stars.
Yes, I love that saying.
Like people get really caught up on the destination, and ultimately, you're gonna end up in a different fucking destination anyway. Right?
Exactly.
No matter whether
Exactly.
you finish up in where you intended at the start, you're gonna move from A to B to C to D. Like you're just gonna keep fucking moving,
Right.
and that's the point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, yeah, just like being able to look back and be like, okay, well, I didn't OTQ, but like I ran a 240. That's insane. Even running like a sub 3 from never having run, like I could walk away tonight. I could well, knock on wood, I could get hit by a car and I would look back on my running and be like, you know what? I'm happy. I'm proud of everything that I put into it.
it should be.
So,
It's absolutely massive. An achievement of just getting out and starting this bullshit is
yes.
massive. Never mind actually completing 5, 10, and then actually a marathon, and then all the little goals that you got to 254.
Hmm.
That's like that's insane. People 6 foot and a male and with a history of sport don't run sub 3.
Yeah.
You're 5'2"
I'm 5'2".
and you run 254.
Yeah.
That's like a billion steps, right?
Yeah, actually my stride is very short, like 1.2 meters. And have like a cadence of 200.
Fuck.
Yeah. So it's very quick. I call it oh my God, why can't I think of the word right now? Scurrying.
Scurrying. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, just scurry everywhere.
Like the Roadrunner.
Yeah. Or like a little chipmunk or something.
Listen, you run 26.2 miles in 2 hours 54.
Yeah,
You run however the fuck you want.
true.
You know, it's
Yeah.
badass. Mate, I appreciate your time so much. I know you're on your dinner break, so I'm not gonna hold you any longer. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, and thank you. I mean, this was probably one of my favorite interviews. You asked such
Oh,
really good questions.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that a
Everyone
lot.
usually wants to know about like the weight and stuff and like how did you lose all this weight? And I'm like, yeah, but what about the mentality that gets you there? Like the body is just like a result of the mindset.
Mm.
So I appreciate all your questions.
No, I just go with the flow. I got no papers in front of me. Like, I just want to have a conversation with a human being, and get to know them and understand your perspective, your journey. I'm massive on stories. I think stories are how we relate to people.
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of like wisdom and inspiration laced within them, whether
Yeah.
it's like a fictional story or like your personal story, nonfiction, right now in the present moment, right? I think that's how we relate, and these are just questions off the top of my head that I'm just interested in.
Awesome. I
I
mean,
appreciate it.
yeah.
Go have a good day, and I'll speak to you soon.
Yes. You too.
All right,
Bye. It was
boss. See you
fun.
later. Bye, everybody.
See ya.